time is here, let's gather round and travel in our minds so far and free to once upon a time, that's where things happen. Come along with me and see. Come on, everybody, gather round. Let's pretend that you were all alone. No books, no TV, no friends to play with, no pets, nothing. Just you inside a room with one window. What do you think it would be like? Be lonely. See, being by yourself is fun a lot of times. I mean, you get to think about stuff, you get to play games, you get to do make-believe and nobody can see you. I mean, it can really be fun. But being by yourself is lonely when you're always and forever by yourself. And that happened one time to a girl named Rapunzel. Now, the reason why Rapunzel was put away in this small little room was all because of a plant with a very strange sounding name, rampion. And this rampion, it grew in a witch's garden. There was once upon a time as beautiful a garden as ever grew, with flowers, scarlet, white, golden and blue, pale green and purple, cabbages, red beans on high poles, rows of red radishes and orange carrots, and patches of herbs. And there was rampion, a plant that was used in fine salad. All flourished in the garden that belonged to the old witch. She hoed and weeded and plucked and tended, all with loving care. When bugs and pests ruined other gardens, hers flourished because she made poisons to kill those pests. When other gardens shriveled from drought, she knew how to mulch her beds to keep them from drying out. Her healthy plants were a delight to see and a joy to eat, but they were not intended to be shared. She built a high wall to keep other people out, but she was so mean and powerful that no one who knew her would dare set foot on her land anyway, and her bad reputation was known for miles around. From outside the wall, there was only one view of the garden. That was from a neighbor's upstairs window.
What a pity she won't even sell some of that.
Well, she has more than she can ever use herself, said the man to his wife. Then they went about their own affairs safely on their side of the wall. They kept busy and were happy, except for one thing. They hoped to have a child, but years kept passing by and no child came. One day the woman became very sick. She could not eat. She lay against her pillows by the window and gazed out over the garden. She looked at the flowers, the beans, and the cabbages, and the rampion.
That rampion, I think I could eat that.
Rampion, yes, but not that rampion. One of our neighbors will surely have some. But he found that the only rampion in the whole countryside was in the witch's garden.
Oh, I'm so glad you're back. You can't imagine the craving that came over me as I looked at those beautiful plants over there. I know if I can just have some, I'll get better.
The man shivered and pulled the curtains. Try to forget the rampion. Who knows what terrible thing might happen if we touch them? But it became clearer by the hour that one terrible thing would happen if he didn't get the rampion. His wife would die. So that night, the poor man climbed over the wall and stole some. His wife ate it and began to get better, but she would have to have more if she were to get completely well. So he went to the witch's garden the next day. He was picking the rampion when a long shadow fell across his shoulder and on the ground before him.
What do you think you are doing?
Oh, please, it's for my wife. She's terribly sick and she'll die if she has no rampion.
Why, yes, yes, of course. Your wife is sick, and yes, of course she will die. We wouldn't want that now, would we?
No, no, please. You do understand how it is?
Of course I do, and you may have the rampion, all you need.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I don't know how to thank you.
I'll tell you how.
Yes, yeah, of course. Anything.
Just one thing, your firstborn child. When it comes, remember, it belongs to me.
She thrust a large bunch of rampion into the poor man's hands. He was so relieved he didn't pay too much attention to her last words. His wife got well, and later she did have a child, a beautiful little girl. And the witch came and snatched the baby from her mother's arms.
I'll call her Rapunzel.
She carried the child away. Now Rapunzel is an old word for rampion. And now the poor father remembered his bargain with the witch. For years, Rapunzel's mother and father searched in vain for a child called Rapunzel, their child. But the witch had hidden her away. The witch built a tall tower in the middle of a deep forest with a single room at the top. There she kept Rapunzel. She treated her well, but she wanted her all to herself. Rapunzel, who was a beautiful baby in the beginning, became even more beautiful as she grew. She had big blue eyes, fair skin, and golden hair in long silken braids. The only world she knew was in that little room that had one single window. Rapunzel learned to sing from the birds who became her only friends. Patiently, very patiently, she encouraged the birds to come to her. She fed them crumbs from her own meals, and they learned to trust her. Some of them nested in the eaves within easy arm's reach from her window. She delighted in watching the eggs hatch and the little birds grow.
How I wish I could fly away as they do.
One day, while out hunting, a prince wandered into that part of the forest. What was that he heard? He followed the sound of the tower, and then he became even more curious. Someone is up there singing. But how on earth does one get up there? There was no door, no ladder, no stairs. The only opening was the single window at the top. The old witch came out of the forest and walked up to the base of the tower. The prince decided to stay out of sight and watch.
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, all golden and fair. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb without a stair.
Down from the window tumbled Rapunzel's golden hair, and the witch proceeded to climb. So that's how it's done. The prince waited until the witch left and it was dusk. Then he went out to the base of the tower himself. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, all golden and fair. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb without a stair.
Mother Witch's singing is improving, but I wonder why she's coming back twice in one day.
What a surprise it was when the prince climbed over the windowsill. Rapunzel was so frightened that she backed against the wall, unable to make a sound. "Please, please, don't be frightened. I won't hurt you." The prince stood there without moving any closer. He talked to her very softly, very gently for a long time. And finally, Rapunzel's fear went away. He was so handsome and seemed so kind, not at all what the witch had told her other people were like. She asked him many questions about the outside world. He answered with stories very different from the scary things the old witch told him. "Rapunzel, the world is such a beautiful place. Let me bring a rope here. Then you can come down from the tower and go away with me." She hesitated. Then a shy mother bird flew down from her nest by the window and perched right on the prince's shoulder. Rapunzel felt that she could trust him now, and they decided to escape the next night. Well, the next morning she said to the witch,
How is it that you take so long to climb up while the prince comes up so swiftly?
"Ah, you wicked girl! I thought you safe from all eyes but mine."
With that, she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut off Rapunzel's long golden hair. Fastening it to the sill, she forced Rapunzel to climb down with her and go to a rocky wasteland outside the forest, where she left her. The witch returned to the tower room to wait for the prince. Pulling the hair up after her. That evening she heard the prince. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb without a stair." He had the rope with him and eagerly climbed the beautiful hair that the witch threw down to him. He was so startled that he fell. Brambles at the base of the tower scratched his eyes, and he hit his head on a rock. He lost his memory. He was blind. He stumbled away into the forest. Later, a hermit found him and took care of him for several months. His memory did not return, but sometimes singing birds would remind him of something in his head, and he would wander away searching for something. He knew not what. Very early one spring day, he woke and wandered off while the hermit was still sleeping. The birds were singing more beautifully than he had ever heard them. And then he heard another beautiful sound. His head began to spin, and all his memory came back. It was Rapunzel singing. He found his way to her, to that wilderness place where she had somehow managed to stay alive. She began to cry when she saw that he was blind. Her tears fell on his eyes, and as they did, his sight returned. He saw her face as beautiful as ever, her glorious golden hair grown long again. He returned with her to his palace, where they were married. The joyful news was proclaimed throughout the land. "The prince is found. He has taken Rapunzel as his bride." Two old people came to the gate with a story about a daughter stolen long ago by an old witch. It was Rapunzel's long-lost parents. All the sadness they felt when Rapunzel was stolen away changed to happiness when Rapunzel and the prince gave them twin grandchildren, a boy and a girl, each crowned with shining golden hair. Story time is done, and so goodbye, until it's time to gather round again. It's kind of hard to wait, but we will try, and hope that we will see you then.